Yeah. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to every of my listeners at this very juncture. My name remains Prophet Akin Bulugwe Ayodegi. I am very much obliged to reiterate some certain things that are going on in the nation and to bring to notice and to our hearing of the confession of Galadimas to the present reign of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The purpose of Buhari on the throne of the presidency. And as this one was pronounced by my friend, my brother, Adewale Adeoye, I read through his article and I felt it should be, pronounced to the hearing of all Yoruba indigents and other ethnicities who may be interested to know what is happening and transpiring in the Nigeria governance, political system, and ethnicities. An epic event passed through 2 weeks ago without significant notice. It was as if a giant comet scourge scurried through the sky without anyone showing interest, or an incubus beast running on a tarmac without any notice from the control tower. In the bitter game for political power in Nigeria and the often vicious scramble for the state capture in Africa's largest democracy, the revelation came that former President Muhammadu Buhari, of blessed memory, he was invited to contest the presidential election for one major reason, and that reason being this: to stop the Oodua People's Congress, OPC in bracket. In a way, the euphemism Yoruba agitation for self-determination. It has rekindled old wounds that there are two major contending in Nigeria post-colonial history: ethnicity and religion. The most profound being ethnicity tied to religion. These factors have dominated power and politics in Nigeria since 1960 and may shape the future. We have four major ethnic contenders in Nigeria: Fulani, Yoruba, Igbo, and ethnic minorities. Of these four, three have fought to seize the trophy through violence means. The January 1996 coup saw the Igbo outcry, irrespective of the propaganda to cover the motive. The second was the counter coup of July 1966, led by the Fulani using a northern minority, General Yakubu Gowon, as a pawn. The third attempts were by ethnic minorities. Fourth, the 1976, led by Colonel Buka Demka from Plateau, and on April 22, 1990, by Major Gideon Oka, a team from Benue State. Only the coup planned by the Fulani or their rookies had ever succeeded. Both Oka and Dimka have been demolished as violence. But the reality is that their mission was to resolve the power equation The threat was against ethnicity or ethnic minorities. Few weeks ago, the prominent northern politician from Yobe State, Buba Galadima, brought the debate into the front burner when he made the most chilling, heart-throbbing confession and about Northern Power game. He spoke about what motivated the North. A section of it, powerful but small, to look out for late Nigerian leader Muhammadu Buhari to contest the presidential election, the last of which he won in 2015, was to promote Fulani interest in Ilorin and put an end to Oodua People's Congress, OPC. It indicated that the race run by Buhari was predetermined. The truth is that with the advantage of power inheritance from the British, the Fulani are the most successful power brokers in Nigeria, either through coups or democratic means. They have managed to hold the aces. However, let us examine Galadima's revelation and confession first by looking at the Fulani ruling class and their successful manipulations of power and politics in Nigeria history. Fulani and the ABC of power and politics in Nigeria. Since the medieval period, the Fulani, a product of the union of Arabs, Judaizers, Berbers, and Taraj, have organized along a common cause in the Roman times. They lived in Tuget and Adra in Mauritania, an excellent transmitter of cultures, preserving their language as a secret weapon. They were driven by the word Tarens down to Senegal and Mali. Their mention once came in the book Al-Bakri, described as an indigenous white race allied to the surrounding populations. Sonny Ali once raided and sold them to slavery. One of the first Fulani states ever to be established was led by Afar Ba, whose son Karamoko Ibrahim took over after his father had killed a Mandingo king during a festival and then occupied the territory. Karamoko declared himself the Al-Aimani and then divided the state into 9 provinces around 11th century. The Fulani formed 3 groups, one to the east, the other to the Masina, Timbuktu, Jori, Upper Volta, Niger Republic, present-day Nigeria, Cameroon, even Saudi Arabia and Chad. One of their leaders, Chouabli, moved with 400 horsemen and went to Kone in Niger Republic, while Musa Jakolo's grandchild, Saadu, led some from Kone to Goba in Sokoto. They came with cattle, camels, and many books. Among these groups was Usman Danfodio, known for his esteem and reverence for his piety and learning. It was this group that left the greatest impact in Nigeria, having taken over Hausa territories and some parts of Yoruba indigenous land. Galadima's confession and revelation has told us again what we should have known, that the Fulani's uprising led by Usman Danfodio today continues to have great impact on Nigeria and Nigerians and Nigerian political economy, including all elections since the 1950s. The intelligence and prowess of the Fulani ruling class should not be in doubt. So also is their prowess to organize beyond the capacity of their numerical strength. Though found in more than 10 countries, the Fulani have no country of their own, even with their population of some 20 million people across Africa. Please listen to me. This is very, very cogent. As it is of there in Nigeria, is the last hope that must never be allowed to slip away. Perhaps, by all means necessary, it is the only country they can own and control. A sociologist described the Fulani as having an innate sense of what is decorous and proper, polite and respectful to their seniors, capable of great fortitude of bearing tremendous pain or affliction without showing feelings. Reticent in their affairs, having a deep sense of shame. If unjustly humiliated, Fulani is prone never to forget such instances of the superior intelligence of the average Fulani. There can be no doubt, but their character in general will appear to retard their advancement. Let us examine the 8 years of Buhari in the context of this debate. In this logic, the building of railway from Nigeria to Niger Republic should be appreciated, never in the national interest. Buhari, democracy and ethnic policies and politics. On the question of power and politics in Nigeria, for me, Galadima's revelation and confession was the biggest story since 1999. He made what himself described as revelation, but to us is a confession on national TV while speaking on the death of the former president. Galadima repeated the same in an interview with Vanguard newspaper. He said himself, Alhaji Wadanas, Professor Yadudu, Basha, Alhatu, Alhaji Yaya Sule, Hammer, and 34 others recruits. They recruited Buhari into politics. On the mission, he said around 1999 and 2000, the Odua People's Congress, OPC, was on rampage, especially in the South. I want all the Yoruba people to listen to this. They said the OPC were on rampage, especially in the Southwest, and that the inconvenient people from the North, to the extent that they mobilized over 500 vehicles to invade Ilorin in Kwara State, with the sole aim of uprooting what they call Fulani in Ilorin. Hear him. We felt former President Olusegun Obasanjo was doing nothing, and President Bola Tinubu, who was the former governor of Lagos State, did nothing. We felt that that was too much. So some of us felt those people were being encouraged by their leaders in authority. So how do we stop that? I called a meeting in Kaduna, and we discussed how to save our people from the OPC, and I suggested we remove the government either through the ballot box or the barrel of a gun. And they said it was impossible to remove General Obasanjo. That was how Buhari came to our mind. When he was approached, he had unkind words for politicians, but since he didn't say he was not doing it, we persuaded him, and we achieved our first purpose of putting a brake on OPC and what they were doing. You can see this confession, and you were saying Nigeria is one. I am just let's go on. He said immediately after Buhari joined partisan politics, we had a very big outing in Daura, and that Obasanjo government was shaken. And it was checkmated by the what? By the OPC. For the reason we achieved our first purpose. The purpose of bringing General Buhari into politics. They fulfill and they achieve the first purpose. Now let's move further. There are important issues tied to this revelation and this confession, so to say. It shows that the ruling class in the north is organized. Is organized a tiny clique that the chief mostly claims it represents 19 states of the north. They hold strategic meetings to determine who leads the country, bearing in mind their own interest. It was also an indication that the main reason Buhari was presented was not for you and I, but nothing to do with the fight against corruption or insecurity in the nation and national interest, but to stop the OPC and also protect the Fulani dynasty. The OPC is the classical sin and says, sums up the over 50 self-determination group in the southwest. It also demonstrated that within party formation in Nigeria, including the APC, under Buhari, there is always a small gang that presses the button in the race for ethnic interest, having nothing to do with the welfare of Nigerians. In fact, since Nigerian independence in 1960, the country has been a ball in the hands of a few. For 65 years, less than 10 people have determined who rule Nigeria. General Yakubu Gowon, who was picked as a Christian to ward off any Islamic leader in the build up to the civil war. General Muhammadu Buhari, Olusegun Obasanjo, Ibrahim Babangida, Sani Abacha, Theophilus Danjuma, and Murtala Muhammad be behind them. In my opinion, is the Fulani oligarchy, the gang. They either choose the president of Nigeria or step forward to seize the baton. Since 1966, Shehu Shagari, 1979 to 1983, President Obasanjo, 1976 to 1979, 1999 to 2007, President Musa Yar'Adua, 2007 to 2009, and President Goodluck Jonathan, 2011 to 2015. It suggested the reason behind the choice of Obasanjo in 1990 to stop the Yoruba agitation for sovereignty, even in more determined manner, with the emergence of various Yoruba separatist groups. What was Obasanjo's response? He clamped down on the OPC, declared Gani Adams wanted, dead or alive, and incarcerated Dr. Frederick Fashion. In the case of Jonathan, his emergence may not be unconnected with the need to stop Niger Delta agitation. His response was more diplomatic, with the introduction of the amnesty program and the empowerment of Niger Delta armed groups with pipeline surveillance contracts, which turned them into billionaires overnight, leaving their environment and the livelihood of oil-producing communities in a shambles. Years after, the national question remained unresolved, but even getting worse. The ethnic power game by a tiny cover to sustain a fascist state, maintain a centralized state structure, and crush attempts at decentralization may also explain the reason for the various military coups. Anyone in doubt of the classic ethnic character of the various groups should read Justice for Sale, one of the best widows Windows to Understanding Power Play in Nigeria under the Military, written by Major Debo Bashonu, who nearly blew himself up in defiance of his oppressors and was compelled to escape from the country. Ironically, and for the first time, it seems there was no uniformity of position among the Musketeers in the 2023. And in the election of that year, paving the way for the look like the emergence of an independence candidate. At least majority of the members of the generals did not support him, while the most dominant Fulani ruling class in Buhari's government opposed him. That is President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. But only time will tell how independent he is. Now, from global capitalism, but from the tiny Fulani clique that holds Nigeria firmly on their palms. Maybe events in the next few months or years will tell. Stopping OPC as Buhari maximum agenda. With Galadima's confession and revelation, it is clear that no president or head of state emerged in Nigeria without a hidden northern interest orchestrated by the few Galadimas made us to understand that the major reason behind the choice of Buhari was to stop the OPC, not to take care of the country, not to fight corruption, and not to do all other things that are, imminent. Therefore, Buhari's campaign slogan, hold on a bit, his slogan of anti-corruption, job creation and security was a ruse, a total ruse, a decoy. Underneath was a bigger agenda known only to a few in the party. Leaders of the Coalition Action Congress of Nigeria, ACN, All Nigerian People Congress, ANPP, and the All Progressive Grand Alliance, APGA, that produced Buhari were unaware of his intention and the plot within. They were made mere cannon folders. The revelation was a classic proof that conflicting interests often dominate intra-class struggle for power and dominance among the Nigerian elites. The core note appears to be unambiguous about its ethnic core. Galadima, he confirmed that ethnic identity politics remains an integral part in the bitter scramble for control of the presidency in Nigeria. Even though, on the surface, Nigeria had a dummy display. Galadima's exposition suggests that the choice of former President Olusegun Obasanjo in 1999 was not unconnected with the need to have someone rapidly opposed to the mainstream age-long political agenda of the Yoruba people who for decades have clamored for a decentralized political system. We should not forget that between 1955 or 1995 and 1999, the OPC and some 45 other Yoruba self-determination groups represented a momentum force in the region. The campaign for Yoruba suffering took a dangerous turn when the OPC invaded the Nigerian Port Authority, NPA Lagos, with the aim of seizing the port at gunpoint. Earlier, Professor Adesegun Banjo had attempted to bring some 4,000 weapons to Nigeria before his arrest in Benin Republic. While security concern about OPC should have been viewed from the broad spectrum of the national question, from Galadima's own confession, the northern ruling class merely saw it as a threat to Fulani hegemony. The group did not look for who would unite Nigeria, heal wounds, and bring hope to the despairing population. but was rather looking for someone that would defend Fulani dominion. Thus, we had a president whose main focus was to save the Fulani hegemony. It is safe to believe that this primary agenda was responsible for the canon directive principles of state policies under President Buhari, including the choice of key strategic security position occupied by his kingsmen. It seems ab initio his people had a barometer that that read the political future, prompting them to work out defensive mechanisms not for the rest of us, but for the interest of their own ethnicity. It is now clear that Galadima and his group saw the stoppage of OPC as the maximum program in the year referred to by Galadima at that time. The drive for Yoruba self-determination long before people like Chief Sunday Igboho Adeyemo came to the scene was like a ravaging bull no one could stop, living in a fool's paradise. While many Nigerian voters look up to Buhari to come and fix the economy and transform the state of stupor, himself and those who brought him a section of it had a completely different agenda to stop the Yoruba agitation for self-determination. So many voters were fooled. The Yorubas were fooled. What Tonije? They deceived you. This led us to more insight about the inner workings of Buhari's kitchen cabinet and opens the window to understanding the aim of many of his policies, like the devilish plot of the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, in the name of Naira swap, which caused chaos and raised the prospect of a coup, as rumored at the moment in the chaotic build-up to the APC presidential primary, and the last plot to pick Senator Ahmed Lawal as the APC presidential candidate. The parochial agenda clearly explains why Buhari issued a statement to counter late governor of Ondo State, Rotimi Akeredolu, why he gave an ultimatum to ravaging herdsmen in his state. The funding of the Nigeria Marad, or Merad in Niger Republic, highway, the setting up of an all Fufude speaking federal government radio should be understood in this context. Rise in harassment terrorism. Please be attentive. We should admit that Buhari's 8 years saw the rise in harassment terrorism. The state itself become collaborator in promoting harassment incursion, violence and primitive imperialism, and the desperation to retain the status quo and ensure jihadist conquest. The armed men became lords, taking over indigenous territories and even renaming many captured communities. They became equal partners with the Buhari state, with Sheikh Gumi going into the bush to meet and dine with the bandits with the permission of Buhari. The reasons for the Kid Globe's treatment of terrorists is not clear and not clearer. In March 2022, 200 armed Fulani bandits entered the Kaduna airport tarmac and killed an official. No one was arrested. In the following month, they killed 10 soldiers. Few weeks later, they attacked a passenger train. 10 were killed and 168 missing. During the APC primary, there were reports that this same clique called for an emergency security meeting aimed at stopping the presidency and the presidential primary. after it emerged that Tinubu was coasting to victory. We should ask where the various herdsmen onslaughts in the south and middle belt pronounced under Buhari designed to provoke the indigenous people into premature war so that they could be crushed. Were the attacks on farmlands not planned to sustain a regime of starvation, employed as a weapon of pre-planned war against indigenous communities? It is hard to dismiss the fact that the invasion of thousands of herdsmen from foreign countries to Nigeria was, well planned and an extension of the same reason Buhari was invited to rule the country. Buhari achieved one major aim: the subtle creation of thousands of armed non-state herdsmen, which have now become useful pawns, scare dogs in their ability to harass other regions to either submit to them or be flushed out of their motherland. Coupled with Boko Haram and the armed herdsmen, Nigeria is at their mercy recently. The Chief of Defense Staff General Christopher Musa said the country harbors 40% of the 500 million illegal small arms and light weapons circulating in West Africa. That means Nigeria is home to some 200 million illegal weapons, one to every citizen, perhaps 10 bullets per every Nigerian. The CDS only echoed what the director, United Nations region, the Regional Center for Peace and Disarmament in Africa, OREC, in bracket, Olatokunbo Ige, said in August 2016. At the National Consultation on Physical Security and Stockpile Management, PSSM, held in Abuja. However, having lost power within the APC in 2023, in their failure to produce a successor, there appears the need to continue with the Buhari agenda of stopping the OPC. This should explain the exit of Malam Nuhu El-Rufai, Abubakar Malami from the APC, the realignment with Atiku Abubakar, and the current realignment of political interest in the name of National Coalition of Opposition Groups led by the same people who either rooted for Buhari in their first place or sought to replace him with the same temple in their hands. From presidents, it is now clear that many people in the new coalition, African Democratic Congress, ADC, are oblivious of the expected hidden agenda of the same forces that brought Buhari to power. Please keep listening to me. Two visions in one presidency. Interestingly, Buhari had a vice president, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, in a political party which goals and aspirations, as Galadima exposed, differ and conflicts with each other. We can all see that both Buhari and Osinbajo had different agenda. One was clear about his ambition. The other, even though more educated, was fooled. So was the region he represented. It was also another indication that an ethnic caucus existed in Buhari's government that had designed the tactics and strategies to ensure the grand mission was accomplished for the 8 years that Buhari had sway. This was the reason why Buhari's obvious ill health was not a strong factor, since the inner caucus of one ethnic stock was very agile. Nigerians should thank Galadima for his confession and revelation. He has told us again that Nigeria is a poison territory soaked with ethnic rivalry. Once closed, now open in our very eyes. It comes to the point that Nigeria is not one country, but many countries, violently lumped together with far-reaching consequences are subject. Unfortunately, the political leaders are not ready to address the issue in a honest and dispassionate manner. It will mean sitting together to address the fears of all ethnic groups, including that of the Fulani, before it is too late. The late Chief Obafemi Awolowo saw this clearly more than any of his contemporaries. But his views were repressed. He was called a tribalist in his time. The 27 years of military rule had the illusion that unity could be enforced by decrees. It didn't work. Nigerian leaders persist in pushing aside critical issues of the national question. It is this neglect that led to the Nigerian Civil War, led to coup and counter-coups, and produced the current armed groups in the north and in the south. Today, the north and south are saturated with illicit weapons. Hausa armed groups rise against Fulani, while the middle belt is in a furnace. Benue alone has some 2 million people in IDP camps, representing about 30% of the entire population. But Nigeria lawmakers roll on their chair with glee. They fail to realize that there is little time left for Nigeria, a highly inflammable country that faces internal combustion, unless the nationality question is resolved. No amount of reforms we do, except the pillars of the house are rebuilt. You cannot buy new curtain and new kitchen utensils, boasting that you now have a stronger building, when the 4 pillars collapsing. All elections in the country will continue to showcase the sharp ethnic divide and the violent clash of values among the contending ethnic blocs. 65 years after independence, we continue to sweep the fundamental issue of the national question under the carpet, instead of addressing historical defects in structure. We are talking of more states that will only benefit a few men and women. Those expected to make laws think more of their fat salary amidst growing mystery and unprecedented poverty across the land. But they don't want to speak the truth. They prefer lies that suit them. They don't want us to talk. But we will talk to the hearing of every one born on the land. More 10 states means more governors and more lawmakers. Every new state thinks first of Governor's Lodge, House of Assembly, and State Secretariat. None has ever taken hospitals and schools as a priority. The defective structure continues to force Nigerians to seek freedom, even in the war-torn countries, which many prefer to their places of birth. Instead of rising up to the occasion and address it, a particular bloc thinks the best strategy is to line up behind a presidential candidate that can defend and protect its own narrow interests without addressing the fears of others. But for how long will a house without foundation sustain its beautiful curtains and pretty nice upholsteries? When will Nigeria stop building a house for the rooftop? There are many more questions which many have to answer as far as Nigerian politics, life, ethnicity, living are concerned. Today we saw all these things as damages to human life, especially the indigenous ones, those who were born in Nigeria. There is no way we can prove it. The government and the governance of the people are in the hands of the Fulanis because of the barrels of gun on their heads. I believe the question has to be what? To be answered by all. Living together is a chaotic situation. We are not one. Not one language. Not one ethnicity. Not one belief. And we say we are together. When one ethnic group comes in, they do it to suit themselves, leaving others stray. How long shall we continue to do this? There are many more questions we need to ask ourselves and answer as well. In order not to draw the veil over, I have to stop it here today and continue sometimes in the future by the grace of God. I greet all my Christian counterparts. That happy Sunday to you. And I pray that Almighty God will see us through and pave way for us to answer these questions. Are we through one? No. To me, that answer is clean. No is a capital answer. We are not one. And we can never be one. Because the thought of the Fulanis differs from my own thought as a Yoruba man. You as a Yoruba man that is cajole and cheated along the line since the independence. Are we true independent? Not at all. Everyone wants to go there and eat national cake. National cake. National cake. National cake all the time. When is the question going to be answered by all? These are my intriguing questions. I pity the children yet unborn. If it will continue in this form. My people, mo fẹ́ àgbáyé ètò yìí síbi tó dé yìí. Nígbà tá a tún mú mi wà lọ́la, mo gbàdúrà fún yín, àánú Olódùmarè yóò máa bá yín lọ. Ọ̀sẹ̀ náà yóò jọ́sẹ̀ ayọ̀. Shall be a great week for you and I, in the name of Jesus. Thank you very much. If you have not been encountering these channels before now, It has come to be. Do subscribe, like, and share all the infos that are coming in. Thank you very much. God bless you.